Hey guys, Michael here from Dapper Raptor. I'm just going to go over the process of how to get the 3D widget world map up and running. Now, I'm in this project that I just used for another video. The car has nothing to do with what we're doing here. It's just the same project. We've got quest map all up and running in the project, so you'll need to make sure you've gone through the standard integration, and then we can start looking at how to do this. So this is a pretty straightforward process. The example I'm going to use here today is a bit rudimentary, but it should serve as a basic for how to get started. I am not an artist. I'm not good with animation, so I didn't see the point in wasting a huge amount of time on making a fancy 3D widget map when I can just show you the basics and you can take it from there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to give our 3D widget somewhere to live on our character. So I'm in the third person pawn here. And we're literally just going to add a cube. I'm going to set it to 0.1 so it's thin there. And we're just going to sort of position it so it's... Actually, we're going to attach it to the camera boom. And we're going to position it like maybe here so it takes up a chunk of the screen. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so it needs to come over a bit more and maybe a bit further away. Yep, that'll do. So this is going to be where our map is going to be. It's going to be always on. Obviously, you would normally have some sort of animation so that it pops up and all that jazz. But like I said, we're just doing very basics here and you can take it from there. So once we have the place we're going to, excuse me, we're going to put it. And you can just do this with the widget with no block or whatever. I'm just using that as a way to position it. We're going to add the widget to that. So if we jump in here and we type add widget, we can add the widget as a child of that. Reset its location so it's in the middle there. Now, there is a couple of problems with the way this works. If we set this to the world map 3D widget, we're going to see absolutely nothing. And that is because by default, everything is hidden and it enables so that the map isn't visible on startup. So we're going to jump into the quest map folder widgets, and this is what I would recommend you do for placing it. Just open up the world map 3D. So it's content, quest map, widgets, world map, and you want to find w_quest map pro world map 3D. Open this one up and just drag a border onto the canvas panel. Set its size to x and y to 0, and then set the anchor to this one here. Set the offsets to 0. Oh, we need to set them to 0 manually. There, so now we've got, it's taking up the entire widget space. We set the brush color just to something that is not the same color as our block here. So we're just going to use a red. Hit compile and save. Now we're going to see, excuse me again, that we can actually see our widget in here. So this is useful for positioning our widget. So the first thing we need to do is we need to rotate it. I'm just going to do that there because for some reason it's sitting at 170. And we want to set the draw size to the same size that we have configured the map in the controller. By default, this is 800. I'd recommend if you're using the world map, if you're using the 3D widget, that in your controller, you leave this setting here at 800. If you want to make it bigger and smaller, it should work. You'll need to change the settings in here, but just for the purpose of following this video, I would recommend leaving it at 800. And then what we want to do is just scale it down so it's the right size. So I know from previous testing that scaling it down to 1/8, so 0.125, makes it the same size as a 1 meter cube. I'm actually going to make it 0.12 so there's a slight border around the edge of it. And we're just going to put that right up against the block. We're going to make our grid size 5. There we go. So now it's sitting on there, and if we go into here, we can see our widget is sitting right there. Just going to turn off that debug message because we do not need that. Okay, so now that is done, we can jump back into the widget itself and delete that border, compile and save, and that's all done. Now, the next step we need to do is we need to set up an interface function in our character. So as part of integration, you will have gone through and added BPint QuestMap Pro player actor. Since the update that included the 3D widget support, there is now a new function message here called get world map 3D. If you do not have this, you need to update the files to 1.4. If we open up this, we can see in here, we just need to tell it the widget itself. Now, unfortunately, because of the way 3D widgets work, this is a generic widget component. We need to go get widget. And unfortunately, this is also a generic widget. In a future update, probably the one I'm submitting later today, there will be an interface message. Sorry. So check the pinned comment, see if that has been updated. I'll include screenshots on what to change here if that is the case. For now, this is only ever called on whenever quest map initializes. So we're going to actually just cast. Cast to world map 3D. And that shouldn't matter because world map 3D is already going to be loaded anyway, so it shouldn't cause any additional references to be loaded. But in general, I don't like using casts, so we're going to switch it out for an interface later. And just to make things proper here, we're just going to set that up like that. We hit compile and save. And then the only other two things we need to do, we need to jump into map and we need to set the map to actually use the 3D widget. So in your controller, click on the map component, go down to world map configuration and click world map users 3D widget. Compile and save that. And then the very last thing we need to do is we need to change up this. So this is the default toggle visibility that works with the 2D widget, like the normal UI. This is no longer useful because we're not using the same widget in the same setup. So instead, all we want to do is go toggle visibility. No, sorry. Is it set visibility state? Yeah, set visibility state. We're going to use a flip-flop. And we're just going to go hook A up there and B there. So what's happening here, we can get rid of this one, is when it's A, it'll make it enabled. When it's B, it'll make it disabled. I would recommend writing your own management function for this rather than relying on a flip-flop. There are scenarios where flip-flops can get out of sync, but because we're hooked up to A, the worst case you'll have is the map will try and enable twice or disable twice in a row. Other than that, though, we should be all ready to go. I'm just checking all my notes. Yep. So if we hit play, we hit M, we see the map is there and we're running around. We can see it updating in real time. Now, there are limitations with the 3D world map. They're covered in the documentation, so I would recommend reading them. But as you may have noticed, one of the biggest things is that the world map actually looks quite different with its coloring. Under here, there is world map 3D widget adjustments. You can sit there and play around with the contrast, desat, and brightness. So I can change it to something ridiculous like, let's just go 1 and let's go contrast of 1. It's probably going to look terrible. There we go. So now we've got a black and white map. I'm going to get an error because I hit M too early there. But you get the idea. So you can play around and try and get a nicer result with that. These are what I found to work best in the demo level, but the scenario is probably going to depend on your lighting settings, your rendering settings, all that jazz. If you were going to animate this, so even something as simple as just setting it up so this cube's hidden, let's do that. Let's go in here. We can just do that on the flip-flop. So if we go, I don't have a reference to my player, so let's just get player pawn. Or get controlled pawn is what we want. And we're going to do some more casting. I wasn't really going to do any of this, but BP, third person character. And let's go in here. We want to get, what do we call it? Do we give it a name? We just called it cube. Get cube. So we could also set actor is hidden or set hidden in game. There we go. So on A, we want it to not be hidden. So we can turn this into a not boolean. This can be a pure cast because in this case we know we're going to be working on this one. And we could set it up like this so that we need to hide on beginning. Where is rendering? Hidden in game. There we go. So now it's not there. We hit M, it appears with the map. And so we've got a little setup. So you would want to tie your animation into this function here so that you've got it all set up to appear at once. Hopefully that's pretty straightforward. Like I said, check the pinned comment because that casting node, wherever it was, will be gone soon in here. Oh, in there. You will be able to replace that with an interface message, which is a bit better. But for now, that should get you set up and running and you can get that going in your map. Cheers.